I'm your pocket filler, the parlay killer, the Northside thriller. Start the broadcast. Subscribe with a smash. The Gorilla Sports Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome in Gorilla Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bolpin, and it is Saturday, November the 16th. All right, let's get into our Sunday plays. I got a bunch of them, so let's talk. My first play is I'm going to take Cedric Tillman, wide receiver, Cleveland Browns. We're going to take him over 55.5 receiving yards. Now, ever since Cleveland traded away Amari Cooper and they brought Jameis Winston up, Cedric Tillman's been an absolute alpha, number one wide receiver. In the 3 games without Amari Cooper, he's gone 6 for 75, 7 for 99, and 8 for 81. He's averaging 85 yards over his last 3 games. That is beautiful. That is 30 yards of value over the number we're looking for. The Saints allow the 4th most receiving yards to the wide receiver position. Cleveland's coming off the bye, so they're going to be healthy. They'll have some cool trick plays to go in there to try and win this game. Give me Cedric Tillman over 55.5 receiving yards. Now, in that same game, I'm going to go right back to Derek Carr. Now, we took him last week over his passing yards prop, and we're going to do it again this week. Now, the numbers creeped up to 208.5. I still like the number there. I'd go anywhere up to about 209.5, 210.5, somewhere in there. Now, he's covered this in 5 out of 7 games this year. He's covered this in both of the games since coming back from his injury. He went 236 versus Carolina. And then last week, he went 269 versus Atlanta. We needed him over 194, so he smashed over that number for us. Easy winner. Now, he's found a connection with MVS. Now, Derek Carr throws a good long ball, a good deep ball. And that's all MVS does is wind sprints up and down. But now Carr's finding him. Now, he went 3 for 109 and 2 touchdowns last week. So MVS is going to be a big part of this. Now, like I said, if you listen to our podcast on either Wednesday, Twitter Spaces Live, or on Thursday when I release that podcast, me and Jay Webb break down our best bets for the opening lines. Now, when I say opening lines, these lines move like crazy all throughout the week. Now, we got this one at 201.5 when we were betting it on Wednesday night. So now 208, we've lost 7 yards. I still like it there. But still, I can't stress this enough. If you want to try and get the best lines, this is going to be the difference between winning a week and losing a week. So that is one of our best bets that I like is Derek Carr over 208.5 passing yards. Now, on that same topic, I gave out Taysom Hill over 14.5 receiving yards. I knew this number was wrong. I asked Jay Webb what he thought the number would open up at, and he said around 18.5. And I said, exactly. The number's 14.5. I sold him on it right then and there. He bet it right there. Now it's gone up to 21.5, 22.5. So I don't recommend a single play, a 1-unit play on that anymore. However, if you need to do a same game parlay, something like that, I don't mind putting Tillman, Carr, and Taysom Hill together on a same game parlay, but I wouldn't recommend Taysom Hill on his own. All right. So those are 2 picks from that same game. Who would have thought Cleveland Browns and New Orleans Saints was going to give out that much information? However, when you do the research and it kind of pops to you, those are the bets you got to take. All right, my next play is a bit of a weird one. We're going to go to the Detroit Lions versus Jacksonville Jaguars game. Now, this spread is 13.5. That's a monster number. I don't like the number there. However, what the sportsbooks did is they broke down every quarter into a -3.5 spread for the Detroit Lions. Now, I really like Detroit Lions -3.5 in the second quarter. Now, stick with me here. In the first quarter, I've talked about this on the podcast a lot. Detroit always opens the game with David Montgomery. Now, I've said this before that you can get live lines on Jahmyr Gibbs and things like that later in the game because he doesn't start the game. But the offense is kind of vanilla. It's just run on first down, run on second down, try and convert the third down with Goff. But it doesn't really work. It just kind of kills the clock and they don't do anything. But in the second quarter, these guys are an absolute demon. So obviously last week versus Houston, it didn't go well because Detroit had to come back to win that game as Goff threw 5 interceptions. I don't think that's going to happen against this terrible Jacksonville defense. But the 6 games previous, in the second quarter alone, Detroit beat Green Bay 17 to Tennessee 21-7, Minnesota 21-0, Dallas 20-3, Seattle 14-3, and Arizona 13-3. So, and what do all these teams have in common? They are all way better than the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are marching out Mac Jones, their backup quarterback. Now, Mac Jones started last week for an injured Trevor Lawrence, and he threw for 111 yards and 2 interceptions versus a beatable Minnesota secondary, who give up the 3rd most receiving yards to the wide receiver position. So this was an absolute decent spot for Mac Jones, and he couldn't cut it. So I do think that this would be a good spot for Detroit to absolutely come out in that second quarter. And also, Mac Jones doesn't have what it takes to run a 4-minute drill, especially against this defense. And I just think that he's going to cough up the ball with, a minute 50 left in the second quarter with 3 timeouts for Detroit. And they're just going to march the field and score one more time late in the second quarter. So give me the Detroit Lions minus 3.5 points in the second quarter. All right. Our next play is I am going to Calvin Ridley, and I'm going to take him over 53.5 receiving yards. Now, ever since Tennessee traded away Hopkins to Kansas City, Ridley's the only show in town. Now, he's had 3 monster games in a row without D-Hop. He went 10 for 143, 5 for 73, and 5 for 84. And that last 5 for 84 was with Will Levis at the quarterback position. He had 9 targets, so I like that look for sure. Minnesota gives up the 3rd most receiving yards to wide receiver position, the 2nd most targets, and the 2nd most receptions. Tennessee's a 6-point home underdog. So I think Tennessee's going to have to pass their way to stay in this game. It's a great spot. Give me Calvin Ridley over 53.5 receiving yards. My next play is I'm going to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens game, and I'm going to take Pat Freiermuth, tight end, Pittsburgh Steelers, over 2.5 catches. Now, this guy is 2nd in the team in receptions and receiving yards. He's covered this in 7 out of 10 games so far this year. His 3 misses, he's had 2 in all 3 of those 3 misses, so he's been right there to cover this number. Baltimore gives up the 3rd most receiving yards to the tight end position, the most targets, and the 2nd most catches. That's a great spot. I think they're going to be really worried about George Pickens and these moon balls, and I think they're going to shade the safety over there, which is going to leave the middle of the field open for Freiermuth, just to have some checkdowns and the security blanket for Russell Wilson in a nasty, hard-fought Baltimore Steelers game. So give me Pat Freiermuth over 2.5 catches. My last play is I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor over 17.5 rushing attempts. Now, the Jets give up the 4th most rushing attempts to the running back position. Now, the Jets have a really leaky defense. If you just watch it, just the eye test, they just give up gashed yards of 8, 10, 15 yards to the running back position. Now, Anthony Richardson is back, and they do not trust this guy to go back and throw the ball 40, 50 times like they were with Joe Flacco. In the 3 games with Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback, Jonathan Taylor went 23 rushes for 110, 21 rushes for 88, and 20 rushes for 105. This is going to be a close game on either side of the ball, so I think the running backs will never be kind of game scripted out of this. I don't think the Jets are going to take off on them where they can't use Jonathan Taylor. So I think this is a good spot. Give me Jonathan Taylor over 17.5 carries. All right, so those are our 6 plays. We had one that kind of didn't make the cut with Taysom Hill and one that definitely didn't make the cut. Again, if you were listening on Wednesday or Thursday, I gave out J.K. Dobbins under 65.5 rushing yards. This was a great spot. I lined out all the reasons why I like it, but apparently a lot of people thought the same thing. It's gone down to 56.5. I do not recommend it there. That is right at the threshold is where I think he was going to go, which gave us the 10 yards of value we were looking for to make this bet. So I can't recommend that one, unfortunately. So that would have been 8 plays we were giving out today. However, we got 6 plays going. If you're rocking with me, let's roll.